has gone on to do amazing things. Actually, we would be here until our time ran out if I read her entire sort of like resume and all the boards and things that she does, because it's amazing. What she is doing right now specifically, well, she's still involved in lots of boards and things, but she runs the Pivot Fund. They're based in Atlanta. Tracie is from Atlanta, actually got her start in Milledgeville and has worked on both sides of the news business. She's been in the business side, she's been on the editorial side, she's done it all. And what they focus on now is really supporting Black, Indigenous, journalists of color, marginalized communities, and making sure that those organizations are supported, they have resources. She's helping with startup funds, she's helping with training, she's helping specific journalists. She's out there really doing the work that like so many newsrooms need. And I don't want to say anything more because I want you to hear from Tracie. So if Tracie will come up here, I would like to formally recognize you with this, and then we'd like to hear from you.
Thank you. And we don't have a mic. Thank you. So, first and foremost, I want to thank you, Debbie, and Doug, and the rest of the board of directors for the Center for Collaborative Journalism for this award. And thanks also for inviting me to share about the Pivot Fund and our work in Georgia. I will first ask your grace because I have some issues with my vocal cord. And so if I start coughing or I have to stop and drink water, just beg your patience, it'll subside. I just have to give my vocal cords a rest. You know, they asked me to talk about the Pivot Fund, and I will. But first, I want to talk about what's possible. We read the Knight Foundation's commission report about the proliferation of news deserts across the country. In Georgia, the report said that there were more than 17 counties that were classified as news deserts. The Pivot Fund team traveled across the state talking to community members about how they got critical news and information. And if you don't believe me, ask my mom, because I put her in the car and she drove around around the state with me, just like she drove to Macon with me today. And, you know, she sat in people's homes, listening to them talk about how they got information, what they did with it once they got it, how they produced news and information, and who they were reaching. All this journalism speak, and she took it in stride. I think one of the things that we learned is that, yes, newspapers are dying, not just in Georgia, but across the country. People are trying to find their way, trying to find out what's going on, not just with our democracy, but what's happening in their own very own backyards. BTV and Pasta La Voz. BTV started by a woman named April Ross. We talk about her a lot because she went to an HBCU, studied journalism, got a journalism degree, and then couldn't get a job reporting the news in front of the camera. And so she left journalism, or thought she was leaving. She started posting news and information on her Facebook page, started and built a following. Before she knew it, she had 25,000 followers. She covered a story about a police shooting, and because there was nobody to cover it in her community but her, she did it. The reporters from the Atlanta station, TV stations, tapped into her Facebook Live, to follow the story until they could get there on the scene themselves. It wasn't just the Atlanta TV stations that were watching her. A local owner of a Christian broadcasting network was also watching. And he invited her into the TV station to do a fill-in job. I think he invited her back. And before she was supposed to do that next show, her husband convinced her to ask the man if he would consider selling his TV station. And so, long story short, April Ross now owns that TV station. is inside 600,000 households on the Spectrum network. And she's still breaking barriers and breaking news. I wish I could, we would be here all night, but I just want you to understand the impact that she's having. When we found her, she had 25,000 followers. She now has 60,000 on Facebook. She just launched a sports newsletter in just 1 month. I think in November they launched the Facebook page. She got 6,000 followers on that Facebook page alone. Between her 3 Facebook pages, she now reaches 60,000 folks on Facebook. But more importantly, she's on track to generate $124,000 just on her sports coverage. She already has a signature sponsor for some sports event she's going to have in May. I think this is proof positive that if we only support these organizations, they can be viable. Another organization, Possible Savannah, started out on Facebook as well, primarily Facebook Live, and they did so because Savannah was under a hurricane warning. Now, there is a Spanish language newspaper in Savannah that is owned by the Savannah Morning News, which is in turn owned by Gatehouse, that comes out once a month, if that. And what Elizabeth and her daughter decided was they in their community could not wait a month while they were under threat of a hurricane. That her community needed to know how to keep themselves safe in the moment. And so they launched Pas La Voz. Just last year, in the aftermath of Uvalde, Savannah Hispanic students and their parents believed they too were faced with a similar threat. Local news stations flew to the scene to report on an alleged gunman. Only Pas La Voz reported in Spanish so that the parents of those Hispanic children understood what was going on. That was the community most impacted. Amazing how community members would turn to a news source that they trust, a news source that delivers the information in the language they speak. This week, Pas La Voz broke another viral story about a bus driver who banned students from speaking Spanish, I should say allegedly. I'm in a room full of journalists. Allegedly, they have the video, but I'm going to use allegedly, banned students from speaking Spanish on the bus, an incident that is now being investigated by the school district. What you need to know, why this matters. When we invested in Pas La Voz, they had 13,000 followers on Facebook. They now have 20,000, more than 20,000, a growth rate of 35%. Who in this room wouldn't want those kind of numbers? And they have a whopping 200,000 followers on WhatsApp because they know where their audience is, and that's where they serve them. Another example is No Division Georgia, launched by a Venezuelan journalist, Monica Varela, and her husband, Jay Cruz. It operates out of their home garage. When I went there, I couldn't believe my eyes. They had converted their garage into a TV studio, complete with a green room. Started on Facebook, the news site focuses on the Spanish-speaking community right next door in Warner Robins. They just recruited and hired their first ever advertising salesperson, who they stole from the local Chamber of Commerce. No Division Georgia syndicates critical news and information to Spanish language radio stations here in Georgia because Monica and Jay understand that radio and social media are where their audiences are. It's where their community consumes some information. They go to where their audiences are and deliver news and information where their community can access it in the language that they can access it. And they are adopting a data-first approach using data analytics to better understand their audience and drive editorial and advertising strategies. Monica and Jay, not to put you on the spot, but would you please stand? We look for community-based newsrooms, prioritizing those that are led by and serve people of color. The industry talks a lot about saving local news. They often start with a news outlet or an influencer who might be a journalist. But the Pivot Fund believes in what's possible when you invest in people-powered media. We believe that putting community first is how we rebuild trust. We believe that we went to the community first and we started to ask them questions, and we let them lead us to trusted news and information sources, oases in the news deserts that dot all of middle Georgia and rural Georgia. When you start with the community first, you see the possible. You see a real difference. That's when you start to see the actual impact of news and information. We're not in the business of saving newspapers. I want to make that clear. We're in the business of saving local news. We're ensuring that communities get quality, fact-based, truthful, critical news and information because they deserve nothing less. We understand that organizations like BTV, Pasta La Voz, and Notivision Georgia are our best defense against the spread of disinformation and the industry's best chance to rebuild trust in journalism. That's what's possible. See them, see what they do, and dare to dream along with us about what's possible. Thank you again on behalf of the Pivot Fund, but most importantly, on behalf of the newsrooms on the front lines, fighting for our democracy and our communities. And because they told me I had to leave time to answer questions, I'll stop talking and open it to the floor.